Get ready before life happens. The podcast helping you navigate life's what ifs.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm your host, Tony Stewart. Today's guest is Vicki Vollweiler, founder of College Financial Prep and author of College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents. And today we're going to talk about her new book. Vicki, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Tony. So glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you back. So, let's start off, tell us a little bit about your origin story. What is your origin story? And how did you come to focus on helping families, especially those who are separated, divorced, or remarried, plan and pay for college?
So I am a divorced parent, but I guess it starts before that. I had gone to Syracuse University for my MBA, and I went on a full scholarship and stipend. I didn't have to pay for school, merit scholarship. And then after that, I was the last job that I had. I was with a marketing firm, and I was their VP of Client Services. And I was negotiating the economics between clients and vendors. I was always looking at the bottom line, the costs. And then when I went through my own divorce, excuse my language, the process sucks. It just does. And, I wanted to see if there was a way that I can help people get through it more easily. Ultimately, I decided to become a divorce coach. I was helping people with their personal finances. And then eventually clients started to say to me, now, how am I going to save money on the cost of college? And at the same time, my kids were starting to get older and yeah, that's a huge question. Some financial coaches may say, well, cut back on the amount of coffee you're drinking per day. No, college is real big bucks that we're talking about now. So ultimately, one thing led to another. I started College Financial Prep. We do work with all families now, but really we started out specifically working with divorced parents. And that's how I got into that niche. And that's what led to the book, College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents. And I'll tell you a little bit about that story and why widowed is also included. I have a dear friend, and she's a widowed mom. And while we talk to each other, complain to each other, talk about the cost of college, that we're each paying, there are lots of similarities. Obviously, not everything is similar, but enough so that it warranted being included. Single parenting and planning for something big like college, where the numbers are huge and can certainly impact somebody's retirement in the future. It was worth putting it together.
That's cool. Well, it's such an interesting and necessary niche I've been involved in some, advising on components of divorce settlements. And it's like one of those things, it's not always included, but yet it's such a big item for couples.
It is. I've actually put together, and I included a little bit in the book, some templates that, one parent can use to send to the other parent regarding college and bringing up the discussion. And the templates, what are good about them, and I've had divorced clients look at it after the fact, and they said they wish they had it at, when they were going through it. But what's good about it is there's no tone. There's no way it could cause any conflict. It's just bringing up the topic in a neutral fashion. The last thing I want to do with divorced parents is create further angst. I want to, neutralize it as much as possible. Everything I do is basically mediation style when I'm working with co-parents. Sometimes I'll work with, just one, but when I'm working with both parents, I want to de-escalate the conversations.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And, we tend to do that with money sometimes. Well, a lot of the times is bring our emotions to the party when it's like it'd be best just to stick to the facts and the
Right,
conversation.
definitely. Right. And college causes so many financial concerns, emotional concerns, and then you add the added complexity of, dealing with conflict as opposed to being able to, work together with the co-parent. I mean, some co-parents can, but not many.
Yeah, well, we don't have those skills. So, what do you feel is the biggest challenge the families face when navigating college planning after divorce? So, if they don't do it as part of the divorce process.
Um, Agreeing on the school and the cost. Um, Sometimes two people, one of them they want to keep costs, as in check as possible. The other one may want just whatever the best school that the child gets into, whatever they perceive as the best school, and they're willing to find a way. They want to find a way for both parents to pay for it, yet the other parent may not be willing to do that. So it's trying to get them both on board. It's getting the costs down as low as possible. Um, it's navigating how much they're each willing to put in and how they're going to divide those costs. Every state has different guidelines regarding that. And just because, one state may not obligate either parent to pay for college, that doesn't mean that the parents wouldn't or shouldn't, or, everybody comes up with their own agreement.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I mean, even for couples that are together, I mean, that is a source of stress is like, should we pay for this college? I mean, can we pay for this college? I mean, couples, I mean, money is a huge source of friction in a marriage.
What a lot of parents don't realize is that when kids go to college, in terms of a federal loan, freshmen can only take out a loan of $5,500. I mean, that's not going to get them very far. They can certainly go to the local, community college or local college nearby, but in-state university, but it's not going to cover room and board. They're going to be living at home. So parents don't realize that kids can't foot the entire bill. And
Yeah.
if they do take out a private loan, mom or dad is going to be the cosigner, so they're still going to be part of it.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that gets into the whole conversation of like, is college worth it? Or assuming college is worth it. But, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about your book. Is, we've known each other for a while, and I know you've been thinking about this book for a while, but what actually inspired you to write College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents? What was that spark
Um,
that you said, okay, I got to do it?
oh my gosh. So the book is part practical guidance, part client success stories, with a little bit of motivation slash coaching thrown in. Um, it's the client success stories that motivated me. There have been such successes lately that I'm thrilled for them. I mean, this isn't going to happen for everybody, but I mean, I have some clients that are saving, $200,000 plus on the cost of college. Um, Actually, this one recently, they're probably saving about three, I'm guessing. I mean, crazy numbers, but it makes me feel so good. They're all different types of stories. One of them is a divorce and domestic violence situation. Another situation is parents who are amicable. One parent is remarried, the other one is engaged. They're working together for the best interest of their child. They're saving about a couple hundred thousand. Another family with twins, not amicable at all. I am their go-between, but together still they're saving lots of money. I mean, so part of the reason is so many people feel like they're alone when they're going through this, like this extra added layer. They don't know how to navigate college planning when it comes to figuring out who fills out what application, who does this, who does um I want people to realize that they're not alone, and there is a way through it, and there is a way to save a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that's so important is them to know that they're not alone and that you've created this resource. And, with other parts of the money world is, for people watching and listening, if you're an advisor, there are resources to help your clients in these areas. And if you're a consumer, hey, there are. Same thing. There are resources to help you. So it's great that you've created this resource. So, let's talk about principles. What are some key principles that families can keep in mind about lowering costs and reducing stress as they go through the college planning process?
So, reducing costs a lot of the time will start with which colleges is the student applying to. There are different financial aid applications, and some financial aid applications will look at both parents, and if they're married, both the parents and the step parents, and the FAFSA application will look at just one household, and that could be the parent, and if they're remarried, the new parent. Um, so that being said, depending on the parents and their respective finances, like showing up to four parents worth of income and assets can really hurt. So maybe best to avoid applying to those schools if finances, if the family would likely not qualify for much need-based aid, they may be better off trying to avoid those types of schools.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing because we went through that not too long ago for our son, and it was the whole college planning process is just insane, trying to figure out like all these different things. And my son had to withdraw from his college for medical reasons. So, he's going to junior college, and we didn't realize California, the first year of junior college is free. And the next year junior college has been almost nothing. And now he can transfer to any, we're in California, any University of California college without having to go through the whole college rigmarole. I mean, he's got to do, some paperwork, but it's like, so we saved a lot of money for those 2 years, and he doesn't have that whole stress of the college application process. So, I mean, it reinforces the work that you're doing that there is this whole if you do the homework and you put in the work, it's like anything else. It's like you can get through this process, but it's not an easy process.
No, it's not. The one thing that I always encourage is for people to be as flexible as possible and to share that with their children. The more flexible everyone can be as to where the student goes to school, and I'm not saying that the student should only go to the least expensive option, but if if the parents and the students say, "My dream school is this, I plan to only go to this school," there really aren't that much opportunities to save.
Yeah, and that's really it is we talked to our son about it was also partially because he wants to get an advanced degree. It's like, okay, well, you need to think about that. If you want to get an advanced degree, is that is part of the total cost that you're going to be carrying. So you want to pick a lower cost, 4 year
Right.
starter college or whatever. I don't know what the right term is, but you know what I mean, where you get your basic degree and then, because it's going to be like really expensive, because he's thinking of nursing or psychology, so there's going to be at least a master's involved, possibly a PhD. And so, yeah, it's what, 7 years of
So
college?
so good news for you, PhDs typically come with full funding.
Really?
Yes. So it's something certainly worthy to explore. And you can
That's,
enter a PhD program straight from a bachelor's. So something to
oh,
consider.
that is great to know. And for everybody watching and listening, see, this is the reason why you need to pick up Vicky's book, College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents, because this is the kind of tips that you're going to find there. Because it's like, wow, that's good news. We're not going to have to pay for that because it's like,
Here, so let me tell you, I was working with a couple the other day, married, and the student is going to an Ivy League school, and they're disagreeing over loans, if the student should have any loans, if they should cover it, if how to pay for it and whatnot. And they don't have cash on hand necessarily to just put it down and cover 4 years worth of this, plus their other children. Um, and they kept on asking me what they should do. I said, "You're not going to like my answer because everyone has different goals, different values, different hopes, different, so what I want everybody listening to realize is that, your values and what you feel are appropriate for college for your family may differ from your neighbor and from the person down the street, and it's okay. And as I said to this person, my answer would be totally different than what they were considering, because honestly, I would think, for me and my family, I prefer a lower cost undergrad institution and save the money for grad school. But their values were different, and that's fine. um so it's up to each person to figure out what's going to work best for their values.
Yeah, and I think that's great money advice all around is, think about your values and your goals rather than what everybody else is doing or what everybody else is saying. I want to throw in one other thing too, as we talk about the cost of college, is I do know that some businesses um, will pay for advanced degrees for masters and PhDs and all that stuff. So that's something else, you know, to keep in mind as you're thinking about this, is that there are some creative ways to reduce the cost and still walk away with the education that you want.
Definitely. um Always search early in the process for scholarships, for undergrad. If students are, um say they've developed a college list, they're looking at 10 schools, start searching on the college websites to see if any of those scholarships apply. And then you know, you can even start using Google or Chat GPT to start searching for other scholarships.
Yeah.
What I was going to
Oh,
say, what
sorry.
I always like are the scholarships that are more focused. There'll be less people applying for them. That way, the student has a greater likelihood of winning.
Yeah, and it's amazing all the just like you said, these very specific scholarships, that are out there like for left-handed people from Iowa, know, who,
Definitely.
who play baseball, you can so it's like maybe there's five people who can qualify for it,
Right,
I
but
mean,
there's
that's a little
greater likelihood of
ridiculous, but
winning.
that is an excellent point, and I know you have some resources for people on locating scholarships. So we can talk about that. So, one question is, you've been doing this for a while. How has your perspective on college planning evolved as you've worked with more and more divorced families, separated parents?
Um, so I think in answer to your question, I'll share that I've developed a book club. So based on college planning for divorced and widowed parents, I've put together, it's a 4-week session where we discuss the book. It's a book club. It's meant specifically for divorced and widowed parents. But the reason being not just to tell people how to fill out forms, it's more to develop that sense of community and support, because people who are going through it feel so alone in all of the chaos. And just to have that support, that camaraderie, the this is how this person navigated it, whatever it is. And there's plenty of it as you go through the 12th grade till you get to college. So I mean, we'll be talking about communication with the other parent, communication with the children, talking about money, talking about the schools, obviously who fills out the FAFSA application. What if the other parent doesn't want to fill out the other financial aid application as the CSF's profile? Like, what if they're refusing? What to do then? Like, so many people are going through the same stuff and they just feel alone. Um, so I think in terms of the business evolving, it's not just about the numbers. It's about what's going on behind that, and the emotional concern and worry in addition to the finances.
I love that because that comes up with pretty much all of my guests. And, when we talk about, no matter what concept we talk about, is it comes down to that at some point, like the numbers are just the numbers. There's like all this other stuff that factor into it. And especially in a situation where you have divorced parents, and especially if the divorce is recent, because then it's pretty hot sometimes between the two. If they've been divorced for a long time and everybody's settled into their new lives, it's like, I mean, I don't deal with divorced parents, but I'd assume that the temperature is lower at that point.
And even if the parents are widowed, they're doing it all by themselves. They don't, they need people to bounce their thoughts off of. So it helps in that regard too.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's often missed. Our friend Kathy Balasek talks about widowhood because widowhood happens at a very early age. Widows are not
Right.
always 80 or 85 years old. Is There's widows who are 40 years old. So they're very much in a space.
Right. And the thing that can happen is, so I'm going to talk about students where, say they're graduating high school 2026, they're going to start college in fall 2026. We're going to use 2024 tax returns for financial aid applications. How much could have happened since 2024 to the time school starts? There are all these special types of circumstances that could have come up. And there are ways to save money, based on whatever's going on in the household.
Yeah. So no, that's great advice. So, here's probably the last question on this is what has surprised you most about the emotional side of this journey?
Um, so what surprised me most is that I'm just talking about me for a moment. I was always a numbers kid. I was always the math person. I said there was no way I could be a psychologist, a therapist, a whatever. And it amazes me the amount of people, and this is my personal journey. It amazes me the amount of people that thank me for that they were able to sleep that night, that they were able to, have that conversation, that they were able to save so much money, like the worry's gone. The fact that I'm able to help people still with the numbers, but give them the emotional relief that they're looking for. Like, it's a pretty cool feeling.
That is awesome. And I think that goes towards, I mean, I know that that inspires you and that drives you in your mission, but it's important for people to understand that going through this process doesn't have to be, it's not going to be painless because let's be honest, all these forms are not fun to fill out, and you're still going to have to fill out the forms and and do the work
Oh,
and
wait,
have
or
the
if
conversations.
they need help, they could contact College Financial Prep.
Exactly, but at the end of the day, it's like it still needs some help, but you can reduce the stress with resources like you provide and services like you provide. And I think that's the thing that oftentimes gets lost in the conversation between, there's all these DIY videos, and some of them are from people who don't have the expertise and seeking out either content or canceling from somebody like you who has the expertise to be able to really walk people through something. And I think that's something that's
So
important to emphasize.
so what I've done, because I know people always appreciate the one-on-one hand holding. So, I mean, I offer the one-on-one hand holding throughout the process, but also, um, I also know that when people are going through divorce or widowhood or whatever it is, finances sometimes are an object. And, so what I've done is I've also created classes, so that way people can still ask their questions, get answers when the questions need to be asked anonymously. Yes, there is a way, so people don't have to totally share in front of a group. Um, and we'll still review financial aid applications together, where they can ask questions and still keep everything anonymous. But I wanted to also create something at lower price points to meet everybody where they are and still give them the services, the support that they need, whether it's the financial or the emotional or the confidence to know that they're submitting things, correctly to maximize
Yeah.
their age.
And that's important is, there is a reason to reach out to somebody who knows what they're doing and to get qualified advice because, yeah, it's easy in today's world to get advice, but the question is it reliable advice? So that's awesome. So, Vicky, to wrap up, let's jump into the Get Ready Hot Take Trio. And there's our three questions that I ask all of my guests. The first one is, what money myth are you trying to break?
Um, okay, if I don't have any money, I'm going to get a ton of aid for college. So for instance, there are certain schools, usually public universities, where no, I mean, some people think they don't earn that much, but every school uses their own formula. Just because one gives a lot of money doesn't mean that they will all give a lot of money. It's usually the public universities that are less generous. So I just want to put that out there.
Well, I think that's important that some colleges are more generous than others. And that just like with a scholarship, is some of them are more generous with certain students for certain reasons. And it's a crazy matrix. There's no like sanity or framework to how the colleges are doing it. And it shifts all the time. That's the other thing.
Yeah, and it's not just for academics to get scholarships. It could be because the student's a leading French horn player. It could be because there's a new major that the school is offering and the student's going to major in it. It could be you're applying to a different part of the country and they're looking to attract students from your region. All different types of reasons why they may offer scholarships. Or they're just looking
Yeah,
to fill seats.
yeah, and I think that's exactly it. Is as you point out, and insurance underwriting works the same way. Crazy enough is like sometimes insurance companies are looking to fill out their risk book, so they may take on different risks sometimes where 2 months from now they won't take that same risk on or price it the same because it's like they're looking at their bigger picture and seeing, like you said, is like, okay, what hole are they trying to fill? So it's like it's whack-a-mole until you actually get out there and do the work. You're not going to know what they're looking for because they don't really know what they're going to be looking for either. They may have their bigger picture, but like you said, if they don't have 20 students, well, okay, 20 is not enough, but 20 students taking, a humanities major,
Right.
they're going to take more humanities majors to fill that up. So anyway, that's a great tip. So let's get out the time machine for a minute. If you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about college funding, what is one thing you tell your younger self about preparing for the process? Because you've got kids, I've got kids, so it's like, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Um, I'm trying to think back and what would I do differently? Um, I'd probably have a conversation about all of the, and I have done this with my younger child. I'd probably have a conversation about all the different schools being applied to, talk about what the likely cost. There is a way to project costs beforehand. Probably develop a college budget with the child. Say this is our goal. This is where we want to stay. Within this realm. And then say we're going to wait and see what those numbers are before when they come in before committing to any college. Too many kids want to commit right away if they get into their dream school without waiting to see what the other colleges offer, and there are missed opportunities when doing that.
I think that's wonderful advice because, and what is it called where some colleges have like where you have to commit and then you can't go to another college?
Oh, early decision?
Early
Yeah.
decision.
Do not do early decision if finances are a concern.
So, wait, so just out of curiosity, what is the upside of an early decision? Because I remember, we talked about it with our son, and it didn't seem like there was any upside.
The upside is there is a greater likelihood of acceptance to the school because you're
Ah,
committing that you're willing to pay whatever they say to go to that university. So there is, a greater percentage chance of getting, gaining acceptance. Um, but I always tell people if it's in question, do regular decision. Don't do early decision.
yeah, I mean, like you said, it locks you in before you have all the facts, until you know all the alternatives. So, but I guess if money is no object and this is the college your kid
Right.
wants to go to, then it's great because they're going to get in. But
Exactly.
other than that,
Exactly. There are some clients where we will project numbers beforehand, before committing to applying early decision. And sometimes the numbers come in and the parent will say, okay, we're going to do it. And then when they get the financial award letter from the school as to what it's really going to cost, usually it's more expensive. So just take those numbers with the projections with a grain of salt. Allow a good cushion.
yeah, that's great advice. So, the final question is, what is your number one tip for changing the way we think about money, especially when it comes to planning for college?
I think include the kids earlier on in the process. I think we have to change the way the kids think about money and college, and they need to realize the costs involved and the costs involved of student loans and the impact that it's going to have on them in the long run. And, for instance, today, so many kids are going on for graduate school. So they're taking out loans for undergrad and then they're going to have loans for graduate school. What is this going to do to them, when they graduate and try to start their own lives? And I'll sit down with parents and students and we'll run exercises where we'll compare, say, an in-state university versus the school of their dreams and what those monthly numbers are going to look like, that they have to pay back, and how is that going to impact, where they live, the car they drive. Are they going to be able to afford to go on a date? Just every day, living and moving on with life. So I just want kids to understand the cost more.
Yeah, no, that's great advice because I think kids don't really have that perspective. And I think this is goes back to the whole conversation about financial literacy for kids and teaching kids early about money, how much stuff costs because they don't realize. But if you put in perspective, like, okay, if you're going to be starting out, you're taking a nursing program. We'll just stick with that because it's a pretty defined nursing program. Well, this is how much starting nurses make. So let's take out how much you have to pay, like you said, for the cost. And it's like, kid may say, wow, I don't really want to lose that much money. So that's awesome advice. I love that.
Thank you.
So,
And
so
just a reminder to everyone, financial aid forms open October 1st.
awesome, awesome. So where can listeners learn more about you, about college financial prep, and most importantly, where can they pick up a copy of College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents?
So people can find me, reach out to me at www.collegefinancialprep.com. There's a little button to schedule a free introductory call. And for the book, College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents, you can find it on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. And it can also be downloaded from the College Financial Prep website.
Awesome,
And also
awesome.
go
And
to the website if you're interested in the book club.
that's awesome. And also, I'll give a shout out because you put on some great webinars or workshops, whatever name they are. I know you put on some great sessions that people can join. to learn more about these different aspects. And for everybody watching and listening, as always, there'll be links in the show notes. If you have access to the show notes, you can find links to check out Vicki's book and Vicki's website. So, Vicki, thanks for joining me again and sharing your insights today.
Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, and thank you everyone as always for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If this episode helped you change the way you think about college planning, please be sure to subscribe and to share it with a friend. You can also go to my website at tonystewart.com to join the Get Ready movement and get access to my newsletter and all kinds of free resources to help you take control of your financial life. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.